Hi there friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan, and today we continue our coverage of the fourth year of the Clone Wars with a character who died many years before the war even started, but nonetheless left a legacy that would shape the future of the galaxy. A distress signal is received by the Jedi Order. It originates from the moon of Obadiah. Obadiah is a planet that lies at the beginning of the famous Kessel Run and is a stronghold of the Pike Syndicate and their spice operations. The moon itself was a terrible place. It was completely barren, and while the surface looked like it was constantly being scoured by a blizzard, what we're actually seeing here is a sandstorm. Jedi Master Plo Koon, because Anakin didn't want to come, along with the 104th Battalion, aka Wolfpack, are sent to the moon to look for the source of the signal. Notice the special desert armor the 104 is using. Gotta love the special armor designs for this unit. It's said that the Wolfpack is Dave Filoni's favorite clone unit, and this is why he's constantly redesigning their armor to look really awesome. This man apparently loved wolves and once even considered becoming a professional wolf tracker. This is probably why Dave Filoni's character in The Mandalorian is also called Trapper Wolf. Anyway, after fighting through this horrific storm, I really feel bad for the guys on foot, by the way, the 104th finally find the source of the distress signal. It's the wreckage of a T-6 Jedi shuttle. Inside of the ship, Plo Koon finds a lightsaber on the floor. Surprisingly, it's still functional. Master Koon has the 104 pack up the entire ship and all of the evidence surrounding the crash for shipment to Coruscant. Now later on, the Jedi confirmed that this crash indeed was Sifo Dyas' ship. So who is this Sifo Dyas and why is he so important? Well, remember when Obi-Wan Kenobi first stumbled upon Kamino and the Clone Trooper project there? Well, the Kaminoans, who had started the Clone Trooper production almost more than a decade earlier, have been contracted to do this by Jedi Master Sifo Dyas. Now, Sifo Dyas was a pretty interesting individual within the Jedi Order. From a very young age, he had this kind of issue with seeing Force visions of tragedies. When he was just a Padawan, Sifo Dyas envisioned an entire world engulfed in flames. Now, most Jedi, including the members of the High Council, viewed these kind of visions and prophecies as quite dangerous, especially visions that involved death and terror, because oftentimes these visions were unclear and could lead the person who had it to fear the future, which of course can lead to the dark side. Luckily, Sifo Dyas had a relatively curious and open-minded and unorthodox master in Master Kastana, and so she actually encouraged Sifo Dyas to look further into these abilities. Eventually, the Jedi figured out that the terrifying vision Sifo Dyas had of a world burning was actually located on the agricultural world, a proto-branch which was hit by a massive solar flare. This would go on to disable many of the city's gigantic floating cities, and all these cities would unfortunately go crashing to the surface of the planet. The Jedi would arrive a little bit too late, but they did manage to save a few of these innocent civilians by creating a massive Jedi force bubble to keep the explosion and fire and heat from consuming everyone on the surface. I highly recommend that you guys listen to Dooku, Jedi Lost, the audiobook, if you want to learn more about Sifo Dyas and his close friends and confidant Dooku. It was actually recently adopted into the curriculum for Derek Zoolander's Center for Kids who can't read good and want to learn how to do other stuff good too. As Sifo Dyas got older, his visions also became darker, and eventually he would have this one large vision of the entire galaxy plunging into darkness, chaos, and conflict. Prior to the invasion in Naboo, Sifo Dyas was a Jedi Master and a leading member of the High Council. He pushed for the creation of a military force that could defend the Galactic Republic from external threats. Most members of the Council believed his idea was too extreme, and they eventually pushed him out of the High Council. Sifo Dyas was not deterred, though. He would ultimately find his way to Kamino and contract the creation of the Clone Army. He would actually perish shortly after. The Jedi Council want to find out more information surrounding the death of this Jedi Master, and head librarian Joe Castanew puts together a very neat Hollow Point project explaining that Sifo Dyas had met his end on Felucia during a diplomatic mission to settle a dispute amongst jungle Felucians. The original record of what happened, however, was classified and sealed by the Supreme Chancellor's office during Finis Valorum's reign, which is why Anakin and Obi-Wan Kenobi were sent to Felucia to try and contact the locals. There they find out that Sifo Dyas was actually with another Jedi. Former Chancellor Finis Valorum was a friend and supporter of the Jedi Order, and so when Yoda travels to see him, he quickly reveals that Sifo Dyas had been sent to the Pike Syndicate homeworld of Obadiah to deal with the drug cartel's growing power, which was starting to cause violence to break out in the Undercity of Coruscant. The mission was kept secret because information about the Republic sending a negotiator to sit down with the Pike Syndicate could potentially legitimize this criminal organization and prove to be damaging for Valorum's political image. Sifo Dyas was chosen to lead this mission because basically he was like the Quinlan Voss of his era, aka the Jedi who was most comfortable with dealing with the criminal underworld. Now, according to Valorum, the meeting with the Pikes had been delayed after fighting erupted on Felucia, and the Jedi request Sifo Dyas investigate there. Valorum, however, doesn't know about the second Jedi that supposedly accompanied Sifo Dyas, although he did recall sending his own personal aide Silman with him, who also perished during that mission. So now we have two conflicting accounts. Finis Valorum has clearly stated that it was only Sifo Dyas and his aide Silman, whereas Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker went to Felucia, and there they stated that it was two Jedi who appeared. Meanwhile, Darth Sidious contacts Count Dooku, asking him why the Jedi are now asking questions about Sifo Dyas. You see, Dooku and Sifo Dyas have been in the same class of younglings together, and they grew up in the Order together as well. Sifo Dyas had always trusted Count Dooku, and the two had a very close relationship. In the Superior Legends version of this story, actually Sifo Dyas and Dooku in 52 BBY would encounter an individual named Higo Damask, Magistar of the massive Damask Holdings Fund. Damask was really Darth Plagueis, the master of Darth Sidious. It was during this first interaction that Higo Damask would mark Sifo Dyas as a potential pawn in his game to destroy the Jedi. And then 20 years later, Sifo Dyas would encounter Damask again, and Sifo Dyas would basically tell him about his visions of the future and how he foresaw this great conflict and war. At this point, Higo Damask mentioned the Kaminoan cloners and their ability to create an army out of thin air. He even offered to provide funds, at least for the initial payment of such an army. And this is basically how Sifo Dyas gets the idea of creating the clone army and how he's able to afford it. Now, in the canon version, it's a little more simplified. Sifo Dyas basically goes there and pretends that he's acting on behalf of the Galactic Senate. We don't even know if he has any money with him to actually, make that first down payment for the clones, or maybe the Kaminoans are just like, okay, we trust you guys, we're just going to make this order without taking any deposit at all, which seems very unlikely. Now, Count Dooku eventually finds out about the secret army that Sifo Dyas is creating from Darth Sidious, and he ends up paying the Pike Syndicate to destroy Sifo Dyas' shuttle so that he can take over the contract as the point man. Now, this is basically Count Dooku's little project, and Darth Sidious is a little pissed off that the Jedi are now asking about Sifo Dyas because he's worried that somehow they'll trace Sifo Dyas back to Dooku. Obi-Wan and Anakin at this point have exhausted all leads on Felucia, and so the Jedi Council decide to send the two to Obadiah to confront the Pike Syndicate. After all, the shuttle of Sifo Dyas was found on the nearby moon. It's very possible that Sifo Dyas never made it to Felucia in the first place, despite the locals saying that he had been there. Upon arrival, the Jedi were greeted warmly by the Pikes, who revealed that when Sifo Dyas' ship crashed, they were actually able to extract the survivor. It turns out to be Silum, the aide of the former Chancellor Valorum. You see, the Pikes were a very cautious and calculating species. They took on that contract to shoot down the Jedi shuttle because they really needed some money to expand their operation. At the same time, they believed that any individual who wanted to kill the Jedi was incredibly dangerous, and so they needed an insurance policy just in case. This is where Silman comes into play. Unfortunately for the Jedi, Silman had lost his mind after being imprisoned for so many years, and before he can explain what happened to him and Sifo Dyas, he's strangled by a forced choke. It's at this point that it is revealed that Count Dooku, aka Darth Tyrannus, was the one behind this plot. He's arrived on Obadiah to close off any loose ends. Anakin and Obi-Wan try to apprehend the Sith Lord, but he's too quick and ends up escaping. You see, Count Dooku actually retrieved Sifo Dyas' body from the wreck and then took him all the way to Felucia and then convinced the locals that somehow Sifo Dyas was alive so that the Jedi would never find the wreckage of the shuttle on that Obadian moon. Now, back at the Jedi Temple, Anakin and Obi-Wan discussed with the Jedi Council what they found via holovid. This new information reveals that Count Dooku was actually responsible somewhat for the creation of the clone army. There are many unknown factors here, though. Was Count Dooku a Sith at the time already? Had Sifo Dyas fallen to the dark side? Either way, as we've mentioned in previous videos, the Jedi are stuck in a pretty tricky situation. They now know that the Sith potentially created the clone army. But there is a war going on against the Separatists, and if they abandon their duty on the front lines, well, it'll probably hurt their public image, which, let's be honest, was already on a downward trajectory, especially after the bombing of the Jedi Temple hangar. Anakin Skywalker had also witnessed Five spouting out that conspiracy theory about inhibitor chips being used to kill the Jedi. And the rest of the Jedi Order all knew about the investigation of Tup and how he killed Jedi General Tiplar. So all they really have to do at this point is to connect the dots, and I guess the only thing that they don't know is that Palpatine is the one behind all of it. But by this point, any move against Palpatine or the Republic could have easily been labeled as treason. So there you have it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this episode of our Clone Wars history series. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button down below so you don't miss out on the rest of our series. As usual, thanks for joining us today. If you're watching this, you are Generation Tech.